like I did about a year and a half sober from my whole of my second year uni. Like I think I had no alcohol for like the whole of second year uni, which is quite mad. So my tolerance is basically nothing, like still. So like 3 pints to me is like very drunk. Like I start getting emotionally volatile and I have less control about what I say. And yeah. So anyway, I'm drinking with these guys and I get 3 pints deep and I decide it might be a good time to stop. Um, but these guys are kind of like edging me on to drink more, and they're like,
Mm,
"I'll buy you one," and like things like that. And I don't often get myself in this sort of context very often, so I kind of repeat myself like, "No, I'm good," um, and I kind of had reflection on this, and it was fine. They were like, "Yeah, like," that they kept going. And I just stopped. But the thing that I don't understand is why, when people get to 3 pints, do they keep going, or their like version of 3 pints, because surely people have a number in mind about how many pints is their perfect amount. So why, when they go up, why do they go beyond their perfect amount? And I think I reflect. It's basically this like in economics where you have this thing called diminishing marginal utility, which is like if you imagine a graph where each you imagine a graph with like each additional pint you consume leads to less satisfaction.
yeah.
And it's literally an economic theory. Um, and so each additional pint you consume leads to less utility, what they call it. And that just means less pleasure.
Yeah.
So I reflect on the average uni student. I'm like, do you enjoy yourself when you're in that state, when you're that messy, when you're beyond it? Why can't you just stick to your perfect amount? And I'm interested in the psychology, so I got my reasoning, but I'll let you go with some thoughts.
Well, firstly, I love the fact that you've applied an economic theory to optimal number of pints. I think that's quite funny. Maybe we should get someone or draw a diagram of that. Um, Obviously, I have to caveat it with I'm not really a drinking culture-y guy, so like my knowledge on what the experience of that isn't great. But what my gut tells me is, I guess, peer pressure is a big part of that, and that's literally very linked to the story you told at the beginning. Was, let's say, if you were a less, what's the right word, self-assured individual, and you were much more like a social sponge, and you were just going to sort of go with what they were goading you to do, you would have probably drank more and more and got in a worse state, because you wouldn't want to go against the narrative that they're trying to inflict on you. So peer pressure is definitely a big part of why people go over that optimal amount. Um, and I think maybe if you experience the like anti-anxiety effect of like the first few drinks, and you start to feel good, and you sort of get the effect of the social lubricant, and your self-consciousness decreases, and you're starting to participate in that situation a bit more and have a good laugh, you may think that then more will mean more, like more drink will mean more of that effect. You kind of allude yourself to believe that the graph will continue increasing. And so you drink and drink, and I guess the more you drink, the worse your decision making is. So the more likely you're going to make a shit decision and drink more.
Mm.
Kind of like that. It's like you go past a certain threshold, and all rationality about what the optimal number of pints is. The economic graphs don't mean anything anymore, and you're just kind of you're you're a victim of your brain chemistry and your nervous system just going, we want more of this, we want more of this anti-anxiety effect. Because I want to say that alcohol either affects the GABA system, or is like a it behaves like GABA, which is a neurochemical, and it's an inhibitory neurochemical, and it reduces anxiety. I want to fact check myself actually just briefly, because I haven't seen this in a long time. Alcohol and GABA system. So alcohol significantly affects the brain's GABA system, enhancing its inhibitory power acutely, causing relaxation and anti-anxiety. Yeah, so it affects that brain network,
So
and
alcohol
that
has a triggers a chemical that means that you have less anxiety.
So it says here it acts as an indirect agonist, which I think that basically means it boosts the calming effect of the GABA system. And GABA it's an acronym for a longer word. GABA is like an inhibitory neurotransmitter, like serotonin. I think we've been through this before, right? Do you know what I mean when I say that?
Yeah.
Like it calms it stops impulses from passing from one neuron to another. So it calms you down, slows you down. Alcohol acts in a similar way on that system, basically.
Yeah. I mean, this is interesting because the reason I bring the economic theory up is in A-level economics, my teacher brought like a pack of KitKats and he asked the student, like, I want you to eat want you to keep eating one unit until and report how much you like it. And so the student sat there and he starts eating a KitKat and like the first two he's like, yeah, I like it. And then it sort of rates his happiness out of 10. And then he gets to like the 8th and the 9th and he's like, I really don't like this anymore. And he feels horrible. But the difference between the Kit Kat and alcohol is that alcohol, it seems like you trick yourself on the illusion that each additional unit is gonna, you're not at that perfect level yet.
Yeah.
You're not on the perfect drunk yet. You'll keep having more and more and more till you get drunk. So I think diminishing marginal utility still applies, but I think it's that, like, I think practically it applies, but psychologically it doesn't.
Maybe the mediating variable there is the effect alcohol has on decision making, because eating a Kit Kat doesn't affect your like decision making and rationality. So on the 7th Kit Kat, your decision making skills are probably as good as the first Kit Kat. But when you're on the 7th pint, you're probably not thinking as clearly as you were on the first pint. So maybe that's why this kind of cascade, like downward spiral effect happens.
Wait,
I don't know.
To tell me about alcohol's effect on decision making. So obviously it reduces anxiety, but what else does it do?
I'm not an expert actually on this. I don't know the data. I just know it does. Like you get that shit in school where people are like, oh, alcohol makes you make more risky decisions, and makes you more dangerous when it comes to things like driving, or will make you say things you don't mean, or treat people in ways you don't mean, or whatever. I don't know whether I don't know the data basically, but I'm guessing there is some. I'm guessing it's kind of sorry, just to jump in there, the thoughts hit me. Maybe it's affects like working memory and like cognitive control and things like that, self-control, self-inhibition, all that frontal lobey kind of functions. Maybe when you're intoxicated, those you have less control over those, or those are less like salient.
I feel like it'd be a lot of prefrontal cortex for like memory stuff where like you have like your control is less. Basically.
Exactly. That's exactly, yeah. In different words, you just said the same thing. That's exactly right. That frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex area, that area where that kind of controls your function,
your body function,
your functions. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we pointed out peer pressure is going to be a big one, and I think that's comes back evolutionarily. Like if all the cavemen are drinking, you don't want to be the one that doesn't drink.
Yeah,
because you got to fit with the tribe.
Yeah.
Well, what did you mean by social sponge?
Say that again. You cut out.
What did you mean by social sponge?
Oh, I guess I don't know. Maybe that's just a pithy like term. But I just kind of meant like someone who, if you're a little bit like, I don't want to just sound like a dickhead here, but if you're just, I mean, I do it too, right? If I'm in an environment where I'm not confident in myself for whatever reason, you're just you just soak up everybody else's energy, and you're just like you're a sponge in that social environment. You're just like you'll follow what everyone else does. You'll do what everyone else does. You'll laugh at everyone's jokes even if you don't agree with it. It's like conformity basically. You're a sponge soaking up the what other people are doing. Essentially, that's what I meant by that.
So people do that when they're getting drunk.
Well, I think so. I don't know. I mean, that's why I say I'm not, because I'm not a big person in this world. I'd love to talk to people who what they think of this if they are in that world a lot. But I think about when we did social psychology, and it's like the difference between conformity and internalization, I think. And it was like conformity is where you go along with a behavior even though inside you know it's not right. or like you don't actually want to, but you just go along with it because you want someone to like you or whatever.
Mm.
I think that comes into it a lot. Then there is definitely people who they just enjoy social drinking, and that's great. Like if that makes you happy, that's fantastic. But I also think there will be people who, I mean, even from people I've spoken to that tell me this was the case when they were at uni or whatever, they are just involved in that scene because that's what uni is perceived to be. That's what everyone does. You know, even my partner talks about it when she's like, in year one, I enjoyed it. Then in year two, I didn't enjoy it anymore, but I kept doing it because I enjoyed it in year one. And then by year three, she just would say no. And maybe that's just a part of her like maturation as a young person, just realizing that's not really what you want to do anymore. You've done your time. You've eaten enough KitKat that you don't want to go again and eat the seventh one. You know?
Why didn't she enjoy in year two?
Uh, I don't know. Really, just she was just done with just with certain things about it, which
Mm.
I guess makes sense. You know, it's not good for your body. It's quite sort of chaotic.
Mm.
You know, she had a job, like she was working, so she had, you know, stuff like that. And uni took more time. You know, took more time, so it's just harder to be hungover and many factors, man, that people just decide they don't want to do that stuff anymore. So
Mm. That's a good definition of conformity. So it's kind of like when you follow the crowd, even though internally you want to do something else.
yes, and then the difference with internalization, and that is when you follow the behavior of a crowd and it feels right to you inside. So there's a difference. So if let's say if you were, let's use an example of, okay, if you're at like, I don't know, you're at some demonstration for some sort of ideological belief or like political movement, there will be a lot of people there that are in, like they internalize that belief, so they follow like X political movement. Uh, so they're following the behavior of the people in the crowd in the demonstration, but they also think it's the right thing. You know what I mean? They have conviction behind
Mm.
their shouting and their marching. But you might have people that will do the same thing in that crowd, but really they don't super agree with the aggression and the violence, or you know they don't really align with a lot with some of the stuff that the movement is getting across, and so that they're conforming because they don't want to stand out and look like, you know, and be ostracized type thing, if that makes sense.
I think conformity with drinking is like me saying to you, like, Joel, why aren't you coming out now? Why are you being boring? Like, what?
Yes,
Why aren't you drinking more, Joel? Like, you're boring.
yes, and maybe I'm fucking boring, but like I'm happy being boring, you know.
Yeah. So my kind of thoughts around why don't people stop is, I think one thing is that humans, um like, I think there's kind of a spiritual psychological like bro science answer, which is like that there's this line in the song that goes like, and that describes that there's demons in this liquor. And that's always like been interesting to me, because it's like, I think there are parts of the self, like the shadow, that only come out when when a psychological filter is gone. So I think the shadow comes out from under the iceberg because of the external kind of stimulus of drinking. So I
Mhm.
think that's one thing about how, like, how our kind of rational self and our decision making goes down, our animalistic and our shadow self goes up. And I think the second thing is, I think that humans have a big desire to experience the extremes. So I think there's a certain appeal about getting paralytically and uncontrollably drunk. Even though I don't get it now, I did get it when I was 17, I'll be honest. Like, when I was 17, I saw my friend drink like 21 Stellas in a night, and I found that
You're a
impressive.
fucking hero.
And I'll be honest, I found that impressive. I was like, you're doing something dangerous that I wouldn't want to do, but I respect it.
Mm.
So, yeah, what do you think on those two things?
Yeah, we do like extremes. We do. I'd agree with that. And I think you only, unless you're like pathologically drinking, you only need to experience that extreme once or twice before you grow like, okay, I know what that dragon looks like and I don't want to fucking poke it again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? One and done. Um, and the other point you made, I think, is interesting. I think it's right that it is, you know, it's a release of inhibitions. That's why people find it a social lubricant, because it reduces your social inhibition and makes you more open and friendly and up for the the conversation, and less self-consciousness, etc., etc. But with that, yeah, parts of their personality, parts of their psyche bubble up to the surface. And one thing I did think about while you were talking was, isn't it interesting that people categorize themselves or others in terms of like their drunk personality? So some people we say like, oh, they're really loving when they're drunk. You know, they'll like, you know, my mate will just start kissing me or like telling me how much he appreciates me and like be soppy and stuff. And then you have people who are like angry, aggressive, violent drunks. And people just have different tendencies when they're in that state. That's interesting, I think,
Yeah,
because
what so
is that a release of their like repressed behaviors, or is it a
mhm.
part of their personality that they cover up most of the time, bubbles up to the surface, or is it just a natural difference? I don't know, but it's interesting.
So what does it mean that someone has a drunk personality? It's like so it's kind of like they get to a state where their normal filter goes down and the shadow goes up, and it's they're kind of they're more authentic. I think they're more themselves. That is more the self is not the personas. Maybe the persona's a bit down. Maybe the ego's a bit gone, or maybe the I don't know.
I'm literally talking there from layperson's terms of like, oh, he's lovely when he's drunk. Oh, he gets a bit aggressive when he's drunk. Just talking about like people do use those terms, and I remember being I don't know 13 and playing PlayStation at my dad's house, and my older brother would come in a bit pissed, and like he'd be lovely. He'd be like, Joel, I love you, man. You know, you're a really great guy, man. I'm really proud of you, man. And I don't think he'd say those things if he was sober, because he was a bit more of a soppy kind of drunk. But then you hear horror stories, and it goes on a lot where when people are intoxicated, domestic abuse goes up, violence goes up, aggressive behavior goes up. So what point am I trying to make? I'm trying to make the point that it's interesting that people show a different side to themselves when they're in that state, and people differ in what side they show.
And it is that simple that so your brother comes in and says that he loves you. Is that because why would he pick that to say? Like, why would he come in and just acknowledge you? Like, is that because he realizes inside that he actually, deep down himself, he doesn't tell you how much he appreciates you really? And so he
Mm.
now has a kind of excuse to do it because he's drunk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, look, man, like telling someone you love them or just complimenting somebody is quite cringe and awkward, isn't it? It really is. And I think when you're intoxicated, those like social inhibitions, social cringes of like, oh, that's a bit icky to say, or like, what's he gonna say in return, or what's he gonna think? They kind of melt away a bit more, and you're just like, man, I love you, man. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I get it. I understand it from similar situations as well. That like, I don't know. I'm a bit more of an open, vulnerable person than I was a long time ago, but I understand how that stuff can be like hard, like being true about your emotions about someone, even if they're positive. And so the lubrication effect of the intoxicant is useful for that. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, okay, I can agree with that. I I had quite an interesting experience the other day. This was when I say the other day, by the way, I mean like either yet it's anything between yesterday and like 3 months ago. So
Yeah.
I realize I say that a lot. So the other day I did like a gym session that proved that alcohol should be considered like a performance enhancing drug. So
Oh,
I was I was tipsy at the gym, um, and I was there doing shoulder press, and I was like I was going for like 7 to 8 reps, and I was realizing like as I got close to like 7 to 8 reps, there was no burn. So usually where it gets hard and my shoulder kind of like contracts, there was no burn because the alcohol kind of like just kind of like warmed my shoulders like, and so I could just keep going. And the only reason I failed is because my shoulders muscular fatigue rather than there being like a lack of strength. And it was interesting. Like the only disadvantage is that my concentration because of the alcohol was like bad at the top of shoulder press, but like I don't know. Do you know what's happening to like my muscles there?
I don't really. I don't. I have to say that that's an N of one study of just like your own experience, and I'm not sure whether that's like scientifically accurate. But there might have been an effect where that kind of burn you feel in your muscles, I think, is because of a build of lactic acid. So maybe you didn't feel the effect of lactic acid quite as much because you're intoxicated, or there was some chemical reaction with the lactic acid, but I don't know. I'd be speculating. But that's
Mm.
interesting that you think, that would enhance performance.
I mean, yeah, it's not normally considered a performance enhancing drug, but I mean, cocaine is. And if you went like wheelchair basketball with like cocaine, then like, I think it's kind of low key. Maybe I don't know. It could be in the same category. Um, but as like an athlete, like, what's your like relationship with alcohol, like for context with people? Like, do you just like are you completely off it because of your sport?
No, no, like I I think it's less about me as an athlete and more as a human that I've just never understood it. I've never
Mm.
understood what people get out of it. Firstly, because when I drink, I just get tired. Like it doesn't open me up. It just makes me tired, and I just want to go home. Um, and in terms of that social lubricant, I don't overly need that if I'm around my friends. Like maybe I get it around new people, it'd be useful, but around my friends, I'm pretty lubricated anyway. Um, for lack of a better word, and I would much rather have like half a gram of certain psychoactive than, than partake in alcohol because it doesn't make my brain feel nice. It just doesn't. Um, so I'd much rather like have a sweetie or like yeah have something else, some other substance, let's say. Um, because alcohol it just doesn't. I don't get it. It just makes me tired.
Mm.
But like for example, sorry, just to end that point, like the other day, my girlfriend's mum made some mulled wine at home, and it was like a Sunday night, and it was like, yeah, fuck it, I'll have a glass of mulled wine. Like, listen, I don't go, oh, sure, no, it's alcohol, it's the devil, don't drink it. Like, it just at Christmas, I'll have a drink or two. Especially my granddad, like share a clink a glass of red wine with him or a glass of whiskey, like that's nice, but I don't get joy out of it.
Yeah, what does that moment feel like when you're drinking whiskey with your granddad?
Oh, mate, it's fucking primal. It's like it feels like some ancestral shit's going on. Like he would clink a glass of whiskey with his dad, who's like now passed on and was my great granddad or whatever. And now I'm clinking a glass with him, and I'll clink glasses with my son when he's old enough, and my grandson. Or it just feels like there's something ancestral about drinking with your grandfather. I don't know. Maybe that's just my family, but
I,
um,
yeah, I'll be honest, I've already done that. So that's like, yeah, it it's it's a good opportunity for connection.
I feel like the conversation you get out of a granddad when you've clinked a glass of whiskey is just different levels. Like you just wouldn't get that normally.
Yeah,
Because my
like
grandma's very open generally. Like I can chat to her about anything at any time. Whereas I think my granddad's he's a lot more observant and quiet and like reserved to himself. Not that that's a bad thing. I think that's the way he's been for his life. He's very rational and sort of he's not too quick to talk and say what he thinks. He's very calm and composed in his opinions. And I
mm,
think that there's a emotional intimacy about sharing a drink with him like on an evening, and that's why I
mm,
always try and make a point to do it when I'm back home.
mm, mm. I think that's really well described. Uh,
Mm.
a little like slight pivot. I think I want to. I think I'm. This is something that I think you'll know. So now I often bring the gym up as an example as well because I know a lot of our audience goes to the gym, and I feel particularly on a leg day that it feels like after I do a leg day, it's like transcendentally good afterwards. Like I feel like I feel
Yeah.
I feel like my head is like like a different like frequent. I don't know how would I describe this? Basically, like is when you're doing legs, the blood like rushes out from your head to your legs, because you like it's intense, and then after you do the leg day, the blood I think rushes back to your head, and I think one thing about this is like, is there something in like this kind of like weird blood flow type thing that is that kind of that does make you feel transcendental, because I feel like it's almost like a different shift in consciousness that you get from a leg day because it temporarily moves you from you, and you kind of it removes you from your normal like cognitive loop. It's a really intense like flow state thing where you're really present, and I don't know if you think about it, like most of your day you're just like physiologically like fragmented, like your breathing's inconsistent, you're moving not that much, you're working right, and then you suddenly do a leg day, it's like bam, like
No,
um
I get you, bro. I get you.
so I think for my kind of thoughts would be, uh, and I'd be interested in your scientific knowledge on this, is that your breathing starts to be really regulated, your circulation is like optimized, and you're in this kind of like mind body like synchronicity, and
Mm,
you like if I wake up and there's like demons circling my head, the leg day will make them go away, and
mm.
I I feel like um I yeah it's like the other example I thought of is like when I've done like a pool day and my grip is like so far. I think you can relate to this as well when you play basketball. You know when you do, you know when you train and your hands are so callous and so fucked and your fingers are so cold that I'm there trying to type, like do my essay, and my fingers are like curling over the keyboard.
Yeah,
But
okay. Yeah.
that makes me feel like, even though it's horrible doing my essay, it's it, it makes me feel so primal.
Yeah. No, I get you, bro. I get you. Look, so many people will listen to what you just said, though, I think. And if they engage in like regular, intense physical exercise, they will 100% get what you're saying. 100% get what you're saying. You know, obviously, I don't engage in leg day because of my disability, but just from hard exercise, I just get what you mean. The blood flow thing that you're mentioning, I think that's to do with like vasodilation, which is basically where your blood vessels expand to allow blood to flow. Um, and that's just needed to enhance the function of the muscles for the exercise, and that's not necessarily what's affecting your mental health. That will just be a nice feeling, like when you feel all vascular and like pump,
Yeah,
like
it's kind
the
of like
pump.
more hemoglobin, more like vascularity sort of
Yeah,
thing.
the pump is a big thing. Like, you know, that's why I like the weight room, is because the pump, you know, the feeling that your muscle is filled with blood, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's really satisfying. But also the neurochemical flow of of endorphins and dopamine and everything from going to the gym is huge. Yeah, I mean, when you said it changes you, it puts you in a different state of consciousness. You're not wrong. It kind of does. Like it changes your brain chemistry profoundly for like a decent, long-lasting time, like a handful of hours after you've trained.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why you feel so good. And that idea of it takes you out of a mental and physical space that you are in normal mundane situations is true as well. Like when you're training hard, you cannot think about the bullshit of your daily life. You cannot. Like when I'm doing grunt work sets, and I'm like pushing my body to like the extreme, I don't have time to think about the stress of like work or some like social thing going on or what. Like I am just so present, I guess, because I have to be because of how difficult the thing I'm doing is. And it's only for like, you know, 15 minutes you do that really hard cardio set, but for those 15 minutes you are ingrained in the present moment. And you know, I love that when I finish a gruntwork set, a really hard one, and like the sweat is like warm and dripping down my forehead, and like I can feel the snot fucking drooling out of my nostrils, bro. Like, and my heart is fucking thumping through my chest like a bass drum. Sometimes I just close my eyes and just feel it, and I go like, "This is what being fucking alive is. Like, this is my body in its extreme." Um,
Some
and
people won't know what grunt work is, so you basically describe that.
grunt work is my term for like cardio, like training, and so for my sport it's chair skills and like conditioning basically, where like say I'll do a set of like 40 seconds of hard work, 20 seconds rest, and I'll do 6 to 8 or 10 sets of those, and then I'll rest for 2 minutes, then you do another set where it's like 40 20 40 20 for 10 minutes. And I might do chair skills, like manipulating my chair in a certain way. So taking 2 hard pushes and then dead stopping, and then 2 hard pushes, dead stopping. Or it'll be like a U-turn where I reverse around a cone, like, and then reverse back around the cone, and those kind of things. But yeah, man, that is like, there is something primal about it. We fucking desire doing it, but it's overcoming that threshold of like, oh, it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's like that's the price that you pay for the like consciousness, mental health benefit, is you have to do something hard for a short space of time and be disciplined enough to show up and do it. But that's how you earn it.
It's a great, it's a great just like thought of like, okay, if I'm going to put myself in physiological stress for 30 minutes and the rest of my day is going to be 25%, I'm going to feel 25% better. Is that worth it? And it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
Because it affects, like, the gym is such a grounding thing, or training is such a grounding thing, because it improves your sleep quality, right? And I found when I started exercising, like, more seriously, I then wanted to eat better, because you're like, well, I may as well eat some fucking protein to try and get some like muscle from this training that I've done. And then you start feeling more confident about your body. Like, I remember being a teenage boy, right? I don't know if you can relate to this, or people listening can relate to this, but I was like 13, 14. I would never want to take my top off in public, or like at the beach, or like whatever, anything like that, because I was so self-conscious. And then, like, not to be, like, I'm not like one of those dickheads that constantly finds an excuse to like be shirtless, but like, now I don't have that insecurity anymore. I literally like dissolved it from my brain. And that might sound like, oh, you're being so self-indulgent, and like, oh, you should want to like be topless. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying what exercise did was it helped my, like, one of my teenage insecurities just go away. And so I don't have to even think about it. And that self-confidence thing of like, yeah, just the strength and the way you feel about yourself because you train regularly, it's one of those things that there is like basically unlimited upsides. But the downside is you're going to feel uncomfortable for a bit.
And yeah, I mean, for myself, I went from skinny to a bit sort of lean and hopefully a bit of muscle. I feel like there's some our female audience. I don't think they can quite relate to what that's like as a man. I don't think girls understand what it's like to go from skinny to like decently hench, and what that does to a man, and how that like how that thing of like it's like every day in every day you wake up and you look at yourself in the mirror, and it's like you can actually look at yourself in the mirror now, and you can
Yeah.
actually that's your start of your day. If the start of your day is like looking in the mirror and you don't like what you look at, then it's not good. And it is, and the kind of the taking the shirt off is it's. I feel like women might see like, oh yeah, these men sort of waving around their shirts and like being silly and like with their shirts off, thinking they're like like really sort of big and egoic. But I think there's also just it's just like I know I've always said that like an in shape man, I just like take them way more seriously. Like
Mm.
if I'm meeting someone at Costa and they sit opposite and they're like in shape, I'm gonna take them decently more seriously. I'm not gonna be like Putin, just like laying back in my chair, just not really caring. Just I'm gonna be like I'm gonna take. It's just something that like signals I'm serious about life. I'm
Well,
just
yeah, it's a gray area, because I can hear like what people would reply to that, and think that's very like, I don't know, like a very narrow-minded view. But I do agree with you, because I think I have to frame it to people and go, it's not about being in shape. Like, yeah, that's a nice like aesthetic thing, and our eyes find that intriguing and attractive, or um what I'm trying to say is it's all about what it signals and symbolizes. It's a signal of status, but it's a symbol of hard work and dedication and discipline and delaying gratification, all skills that we admire in people. And I do feel like, it's not something that's spoke about, because speaking about it implies that like we're looking down on people that aren't like don't go to the gym regularly. But your point about like how you look at yourself in the mirror is real. It's a real fucking thing. It affects everybody. And you know, the one solution is like super body positivity movement kind of vibe, and go, you know, you should love the way you look no matter what you look like, and there's no perfect body, and yada yada yada. And there's a time and a place for that. You know, sometimes body standards are fucking ridiculous. Like I remember being a 17-year-old kid and thinking that I needed to look like Chris Bumstead, but that's just stupid. And I think there's a nuanced perspective that's not that extreme, but it's not the extreme of being Chris Bumstead. There's a middle ground where it's like you just want to look yourself in the mirror and like don't think you're like gross, like, and just be like, okay, look, I've put some work in here. I've made some progress, because that effect on your self-esteem will pay dividends, and can link to a great like positive like emotional and behavioral cascade. I think it's, especially for a young guy, it's massive.
Mm. I really want to nail this sort of gym point with so why exactly does the gym increase dopamine or serotonin?
Oh, I mean, that's, I have to say, and I don't really know the research and the exact like biochemical reactions, but I know that physical intense exercise increases like certain endorphins and neurochemicals are probably, you know, noradrenaline, dopamine, maybe some serotonin in there, whatever. It affects them. Why? I don't know. Maybe we can go around some sort of evolutionary rabbit hole and go, is it because it promoted our ancestors like going out and hunting, or like being physically competent, or like doing something difficult in the body, like you know catching prey, or you know running and chasing, I don't know, whatever. Like it basically, for it to make us feel good naturally, there had to be like an evolutionary reason why the body wanted to promote that behavior. Does that make sense? It's like,
Yeah, it's
like
like in
hitting.
critical instance that we now have to pay for sort of weights
Yeah.
to get that same evolutionary boost. I think it is evolution.
And there's probably a reason why sitting around and doing nothing doesn't make us feel good. Because if sitting around and doing nothing made us feel good, then our ancestors thousands of years ago would have died, because they'd have sat around doing nothing, feeling great, and starved or been eaten by a predator or whatever the fuck, got a disease and died, or you know whatever it is. We feel good by doing shit and like engaging with reality and doing hard stuff and overcoming challenge. And the reason that we've come so far as a species, or one of the reasons, obviously, because there'll be a multitude, but one of them is the fact that that makes us feel good. And what's the relationship to that? Did the doing hard shit come before the feeling good, or did the feeling good motivate us to do the hard shit? I don't know, but there is something to that. We're not just satisfied doing nothing.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to like a girl about her experience with the gym, because I know it's significantly different. But I wonder her kind of effects on. I wonder if girls' effects of the gym are like more than males, like even, because I think I feel like women would get so much of a. I think is even more important to them to have this kind of positive self-image, and
Mm.
I feel like for a girl to go out and go to the gym is a big thing accomplished, and to get into the routine, it's like there's girls in my gym that like just lifts more than the guys. Like
Yes, man. Like
um
I think we're fundamentally motivated by the same reasons. They want to feel good about themselves. They want to be attractive. They want to feel healthy, feel positive. Um, so I think it's the same thing. I think just body image in guys is maybe less talked about, but it's becoming more and more talked about. I think as like fitness and bodybuilding becomes a bigger thing, especially on social media. But yeah, man, it's positive.
and can you relate as well? Like when you're doing grunt work, you're doing laps, and then like you finish that, and your calluses are mad, and like it kind of gives you presence. Like
Mm.
the rest of your day, you're walking around as like you've got scars. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Bro, I can show you an example right now. I don't know if the camera can see this as a symbol of like hard work, but I've got this blister on my hand here from training yesterday, and it's like at the time it's fucking painful, bro. But like, the rest of the day it's like a cool symbol of like that was hard work. Or like I've got a picture of like 2 years ago or something how my hands looked after a training camp that I could send to you if you clip this or whatever, or to put over the top of the screen. And it's like that they're fucking mashed up. But there's a part of me that loves that, and it's a
Yeah.
weird like paradox, isn't it?
No, I get that so much. It's like when you look at your friend at the gym and you're like, let's see the calluses, and you're just
Yeah,
like, that was good.
well, it's weird, you know. We
And
maybe
the,
we
the
you know we
last
shouldn't go on.
Oh, I was going to say the last thing on this topic that I was interested in is I feel like this has this the blood rush thing has like a similar effect with like the saunas and kind of hot cold and things like that. And
Yes.
I I'm just really trying to understand like is there a correct kind of link between like feeling good and like blood like flowing, getting vascular? And I know it's probably different in the hot cold sense, but I'm trying to get like some real clarity around this.
Um. Well, I have to say I'm not really sure like what the exact biology of it is. Yes, the hot cold is a it puts your body in that like hyper stress state, physiological stress, um, and it does vasodilation in the heat and vasoconstriction in the cold. Like all the blood rushes to your internal organs in the cold, and then in the heat, all the blood rushes to your sort of skin to release heat. Um, that that will just have an effect. It just makes it changes your brain chemistry. It probably has hormonal changes, but I'd suggest that you like look at the research on that, Jacob, and see what what's the relationship, or what does the blood flow do exactly? Because I'm not sure. There will be there will be something out there.
Okay, John, tell me about your tank experience.
I'm trying to send you this picture of my hands. Maybe I'll try and do that after the podcast, just as an example, because it's funny. But anyway, yes. So this weekend just gone, I had a sensory deprivation tank session, which is my fifth one now. Because we did we did two together at U Float, and then I'd done two before that, so it's my fifth, and it was very good. It's probably the deepest I've gone, like naturally. Maybe because of like I've done it a good few times now, so my body's just used to the sensation, and my mind can kind of switch off better. And I had a lot of good reflections, and maybe this will link into like the final segment that we wanted to have for this episode, which is thinking about 2025 coming to a close and 2026 being just over the horizon. I had a lot of reflections about sort of my life mission and purpose, I guess. And this is going to sound so like woo-wooey and like people will just think, what is he on about? But I feel like in the tank, I had my version of having a conversation with a higher power. Now, I didn't talk to God, and I wasn't fucking like Moses in the burning bush. Like that wasn't what it was like. But it was just like I asked myself some quite key questions, and I thought to myself, how would God, in the way I conceive Him, reply? Like in my version now, and it was a conversation in my own head. Obviously, it wasn't like some external being replying to me, but it was like I imagined that situation, if that makes sense. And I thought it would just be worth like going over a couple of the key takeaways that I got from that like conversation with myself slash my higher self kind of thing. And it was a reminder of we can't conceptualize how important the meaningful work we do is, because all we get is like the day-to-day feeling. And it's satisfying to sit here and do a podcast with you, and I know that like reading and writing is good for me, and I know that training is good for me, and getting better in my sport is good for me, but the like true impact of those practices and that meaningful work on your life, you can't even conceptualize, because you can't see how the daily weekly grind that me and you do for like the podcast and everything around it, we can't see how that will affect us in the future when we're fathers, for example, or husbands or grandfathers, or when we do sort of get to the peak of our careers and whatever that might look like. We can't see the long-term benefits of that, and it's exponential, and it pays dividends for your entire life. And like accruing wisdom is the ultimate gift and reward. And anything that gets in the way of that is just a silly distraction. And then you might make the point, oh, what if like my relationships or my friendships distract me from the mission? And it's like, that's silly, because they're part of it. Because you can learn wisdom from everything in your life if it's done correctly. I think the things that are true distractions are like the way that technology influences our life. I had a lot of thought processes around that while I was in the tank, and sort of being wary of how, even though my screen time is low and I don't have like TikTok or whatever, but the way I get captured by things, even like Substack or YouTube, and I think I'm doing something intellectual, but it's just masquerading as that, and really it's distraction. So that reminder of how important that mission is, and how your mind, I think this is something Chris Williamson said, but I don't know who he got it from. I don't know if it was him or one of his guests, but this idea that the mind is an appreciating asset, and you can keep working on your mind, tinkering at it like a blacksmith for the next fucking 6 decades of your life. Yes, at 25, the brain is fully, the prefrontal cortex is fully developed, etc., etc. But in terms of your wisdom and your intellect, you can build that for the rest of your life. And it pays constant dividends. Like I said, it's the ultimate investment. The texture of your mind, your worldview is the ultimate investment. And then I've got more bits, but I'll do this one more bit before I pause. I was trying to question when I was in the tank, well, how do we actually invest in our minds? Because I want to know that for myself, but I also want to find a way to share that with others. Maybe that's my life work, is to show how we do that best. And it is this idea of reading and writing, but being able to extract from the things you read and write what really resonates with you, and mold your ideas around the stuff that feels most valuable, and disregarding the things that feel futile to you, even if they feel meaningful to somebody else. This idea of physical discipline came up as well, which is very relevant to the conversation we just had about gym and the exercise. And then the final point I put was having existentially salient experiences. And the way I defined those was situations in life that you can't simulate, and being present with them and seeing what wisdom you can draw from them. So a great example would be the tournament I did in Brazil in the summer. I could never simulate that on like a rainy Thursday like this and simulate the way it made me feel. I can only do that in those conditions. And I had to train for X amount of years to get to that point, to get selected to go and play. And things like a podcast conversation, I couldn't simulate this on my own. When we go places together and we bounce off each other's ideas, we go down this conversational rabbit hole, we can accrue wisdom from this, because we can't just fucking Google it. We can't just Google the answer. We go on this kind of adventure together to figure out what things we think are true and what aren't, and the way we should think. And, relationships and your first love, and building that together with somebody, that's something you can't simulate. Or a good friendship, you can't simulate that. Or the look of a sunset. These existentially salient experiences that grip us and make us feel, I guess, it's meaning. They're meaningful. They're fulfilling. The more you engage in those and be present with those, the more you kind of invest in your mind and your perspectives. So I'll pause there, because I have a little bit more to go on to, and just see what you think of what I've said so far.
Yeah. I'm trying to think how I word this. I basically want to say that consuming instant gratification is like not investing in your mind. And I think even a lot of the time that can masquerade as procrastination. And I think of this, I think there's a big demographic of people that like are a bit older, they're like 30, and they just keep like consuming, and also like learning with trying to like learn new things, and kind of just storing up loads and loads of knowledge without an outlet. And I feel for those people, but I feel like the ultimate investment in your mind is action. And I feel like there's this thing that comes along with memory as well, where like, as you said, kind of the prefrontal cortex stops growing around 25. But it's interesting to notice how my memory's differed and it's changed, because it's like we kind of how our memory changes as we get older. And I feel like you kind of have to grow past this consuming of instant gratification. And then, because if you're still kind of like, if you're like 25 and you wake up and you're consuming instant gratification, and then you like try and do something a bit meaningful, you still have like a big chunk of your day that's like hasn't really gone past that, and so your mind it still has constraints that are not being that diminishes kind of that restricts you investing in it, and that kind of cycle. And so that's my kind of I don't know if I articulate that particularly well, but that's my instant thoughts. And I think that's pretty profound. Your kind of I think I like the way that you said how you spoke to a higher being, but instead of like directly kind of this like external source, it was more like, what would God say about this? I think that's a really nice.
Yes. Well, that kind of links to the final point I'm going to make in a second, but just to build on what you said, yeah, like I read this article the other day, and it was, like many articles I've read before about, don't get distracted by technology, blah, blah, blah. But it just one line just kind of, there was one sentence that was just, it just kind of puts everything into perspective. And the guy wrote, well, Carl Jung didn't have Tinder. Like, Einstein didn't have fucking Instagram reels. Like, all these great thinkers and philosophers in the past. Like, imagine if, like, I don't know, like when Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein, right? A fucking fantastic classic piece of literature. Imagine if she like had a laptop and had another tab open that had like Pinterest on it, and she was getting distracted every 10 minutes. Like, she wouldn't have wrote like one of my favorite anyway best bits of Gothic literature. Like, it wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have that masterpiece. And putting that sentence of those key figures like and thinkers from history and being like, if they had the distractions we had now, would they be who they were? And it takes a lot to be somebody like that now because of how like capturing these things are, because there are algorithms that are being crafted purposefully just to take your attention. And I think that might be the biggest like separation between people in our generation, in our working lives, is have you still got a grip on your attention span? Can you still focus and do meaningful work? Because even me, when I don't have social media, but I'll still go sit on the toilet and like whip out Substack and read through shit that I don't remember, because it's just stupid. It's just like a natural brain proclivity to do it. But like, one of my reminders in the tank was like, your work is too important to get like caught in that stuff. And not when I think about my work, I don't just think like, oh, so people like hear what I have to say or read my shit. It's more for me. For me, that internal work, that self-work, that's the most important thing. Because if it never gets me anything monetarily, it will make me a better, father, husband, friend, son, brother, all that kind of stuff. That's what it's about. And you touched on my idea of this higher power thing again, and I'm going to reiterate an idea that I think I mentioned maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 episodes ago. And this interview that Muhammad Ali did. And he was asked, like, what was he going to do after he retired from boxing? And he just said, I'm getting ready to meet God. It's just such a good frame. Because, and I think people will instantly, like, they'll instantly have their backs up and be confrontational about it if they're an atheist or whatever, they don't believe in God. But I'm not saying that I mean we're going to die and then we meet God and have a conversation with him about our life. What I mean is, if you lived your life like you were preparing to meet God, you would probably have a good life, independent of whether he exists or not. Because that, like, could you stand in front of the creator of the universe and tell him who you were and why you made the decisions you did? And if the answer to that question is no, you got work to do. Even if that God doesn't fucking exist at all. That, like, frame for what life should be like, I think is so valuable.
I think that frame is more important in the afternoon of life from a Carl Jung point of view. I think it's almost like the morning of life is to. I don't want to explain the whole theory because I think it's kind of long, but the morning of life is to almost prepare you for the afternoon of life so that you're practically in a good position and you can provide, and so you have the time and the freedom to then try and meet God in the afternoon.
But I also think God might, we're being so hypothetical here, but let's just keep going. God might ask you why you chose to do the things you did in the morning of life to establish yourself, like, practically. Like if I stand before him when my life is done and he asks me why did I become a professional athlete, and if my answer is, well, I didn't really want to, but I did it because that's what I always did, or because I wanted people to respect me, or out of greed or out of ego, that's not going to serve me well. But if I
Mm,
did it to inspire others and to master a craft and to provide for me and my family freedom, do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah,
that also applied to it too. But I agree with your point that the morning of life lays the worldly and material foundations so that you can have the sort of philosophical, existential discovery part of your life in the afternoon.
that was a really good pushback, actually. Yeah, because we it's almost like we have a difficult choice, and the kind of it's more of a difficult choice to choose purpose in the morning of life, but that's the choice that we have, and somehow we need to go find it. And just to kind of relate what you said back to um just to relate what you said back to about how Carl Jung doesn't have Tinder. I I'm I remember like this Childish Gambino interview where he's like sat there on one of Childish Gambino was sat on, I think it was, what are those like big American talk shows with Jimmy Kimmel, the
Yeah, like
late
late night chat shows.
yeah, yeah. So Childish Gambino was on the late night show, and they were telling him like how many streams his YouTube video has of This Is America, and he was like, "Does it? Oh shit!" And I think that's just like such a good like nice little kind of like Carl Jung not having Tinder moment of like you don't even know, it doesn't even distract you. He's not even on YouTube. Like he doesn't even like it doesn't. There's no acknowledgement because he is just so deep in the craft. And like if Carl Jung did have Tinder, he would like just there's no way he'd be thinking about how there's two selves and how he has to live
Yeah,
one out out in life and how he's got his other true self that he is, and he'd just be distracted with writing all of his books, and like he's like I don't know, it'd distract him.
yeah, exactly. I just think it's an amazing frame to think, what would these great thinkers from history, um, like how would they deal with our like distraction landscape of today? Okay, should we do a both of us? It kind of like when we did an episode 100 where we both just did a little spiel about reflecting on
Mm.
the last episode. Should we both kind of reflect on our 2025 and give like one or two aims and objectives for 2026 and just see what comes off the cuff? I know we've not really prepped for this, but just see what comes out and go from there.
Yeah, I want you to go first.
Okay. I think 2025 was a year of two halves for me. Um, I think my new year really was after my like international tournament in June. Because the first half of the year was kind of everything working towards going to Brazil. And then the second half of the year was a lot of time off in the summer, and then this sort of new wave that I'm in now this season that is kind of working towards the end of the season and potentially playing abroad and stuff like that. Um, there was a lot of shifts this year. I feel like I've matured a lot this year. I feel like I learned a lot this year. Um, I feel like the podcast has done really well this year, both sort of externally, but also in terms of how we do this and how we engage with guests and how we orchestrate conversation. I got into like my first proper serious adult romantic relationship this year, which is probably like, if not the top one, definitely the top three things that have happened this year and shifted my life massively. And it's put everything else in perspective, and it's opened up a new part of myself. And it's been challenging, obviously, at times, but like it's a beautiful thing, and it's maybe the biggest motivation for everything I do now. Um, and it's been a testing time. The last 3 months have especially been like a whirlwind of busy, uh, busy obligations and sport and uni and everything. But I'm very grateful for the opportunities that the powers that be have laid in front of me this year and the doors that have opened. And I hope that I'm living up to those opportunities with my efforts. 2026 wise, I really want to dial in on what we're doing here, Jacob. I think especially because we're going to graduate from university, like post May. I may take some time off and go on some trips and stuff after uni, but like the podcast and my kind of like philosophical work, I feel like I'll be able to put 50% more, if not 100, like double the effort in. Especially because, you know, hopefully my job will just be playing sport and I'll have a lot of free time outside of training and fixtures to do this stuff. Even down to the small things like travel to games when I play professionally will be on a coach rather than me driving. So I'll have hours to read when I'm like traveling and stuff like that. Um, and I'd like to just be more present and like not rush things as well. Like I'm very aware from turning 21 how finite like our youth and our 20s is, and like in a year from now I'll be 22, and you know it's so finite. This period of our 20s and our young 20s especially we cannot do again, and so that doesn't mean I want to hyperfixate on the things I do and the experiences I have, but I just want to be super present. So I guess they're quite two quite broad things, but like treating my work like it's my art or my devotion to the divine, and seeing it as having like deep significance, and being as present and as loving of the present moment as I possibly can.
Is there any lessons about having a relationship that you think you're going to move into 2026?
Definitely. You know, I mean, yeah, she's my emotional home like now, and everything is like she's the emotional foundation with which I explore and take on the outside world. And like a lot of my motivation for my work life is to then build over the next 5 to 10 years an environment where we can potentially start a family and shit like that. And you know, it's made me reflect a lot on my emotional vulnerabilities and insecurities, and there's a lot of self work that's been done through that, for sure.
Hmm. I think you touched on something really deep there about how we're never going to get these years back. It's so deep, man.
Mm.
It, we're never going to get these years back. At least not this body. Uh, yeah, I feel like God tested me a lot this year. Uh,
Mm.
and I think it's so like it's difficult for me to process that I'm never going to get this year back, because I know I know you live sort of an unconventional life to sort of the average 21-year-old. I'd say I do a lot as well, but I don't know if I'm reaping the success of what I'm doing yet. I feel like you are, and I feel like that's what's been challenging a lot this year. I think the good thing is I kept going, and
Yeah.
like when like life has got like pretty hard, like, and the good thing is I can look back and see that I kept going, and um, I think I spent a lot of the time this year throwing shit at the wall and uh trying to see if anything sticks in kind of this entrepreneurial world that I'm trying to be a part of. And I I feel like trying to get there has taken a lot out of me, and it means that I'm not particularly that present. Like time goes by like crazy quick, and like I kind of just like work, and like I just spend sort of every day kind of working, and the time just goes by so quick. And yeah, it's that's why it's hard, because I'm basically I'm like betting so much on that, like the fact that I'm betting so much on that I'm building like almost unconscious skills that I'll get to a point, because of how many reps I've done, I'll get to a point where I'll be so unconsciously competent in like a couple of years that like I'll be able to make sort of my lifestyle, my sort of digital and like professional lifestyle work. But it's been hard this year because I haven't seen the rewards, and it's just like I don't know, it's a lot of chaos a lot of the time. It's a lot of uncertainty, not knowing what I'm doing is like having a direct kind of tangible result. Um and I've been up to some interesting things like this year, like getting like I've there's decent memories. I had a door-to-door sales job, and there's a lot of decent memories in that. Just kind of like that that experience showed me like how to get to like a different kind of level of like confidence as a person, and this kind of constant rejection therapy. And like I feel like the ability to talk to strangers, I think, and the ability to be like, to not have fear in the presence of like meeting new people is significantly improved. I think I've approached like at least sort of 30, 40, maybe 50 women the whole year, which like is quite a lot. So this kind of fear of rejection has gone down a lot. And I feel like the thing of like, when you have nothing to lose, you're dangerous. I do feel a lot. I think that is true, because like you just reach a point where you just like don't care what like anyone thinks. And like I got like a different level of like not caring, to be honest. So I think I am like somewhat proud. It's just sad that the external stuff hasn't really come along yet. So I think for next year, I think I got to get ready to start a new like cycle of the hero's journey. And I think I just got to like I think I just got to kind of do what Simon Squibb said to me, which is like keep feeding this like philanthropic, meaningful, great thing that you have with the podcast to the world. And feed that and try and do it through a business that's like that's more kind of is not as uncertain. It's more like you've got money and like more frequently. So because I wouldn't want, the fear is to have another couple of years that I wouldn't what that I'm not going to get back, and they're not going to anything. But I think, I don't know, hopefully I'm going to see like more of a change. Hopefully I'll do something right, and then it would just go really right, and I'll double down, and then like
Well,
yeah.
when you're chipping away at the marble and each individual like aspect, it's very hard to zoom out and see what the beauty of the sculpture that you're making. And it just, you feel like you're chipping away and chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And, you know, I think there's still a lot to be said for how you as a person have evolved and improved across this year, even if the external metrics haven't changed drastically. You know, you're like, I think you are building the unconscious competence, even just from how I've known you through doing this over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think that unconscious competence is what it is. And
What about 2026?
I mean, I don't really wait. What things I want to do?
What are the
Mm,
aims? What are the intentions?
mm, mm, I think about this time next year, like uh, I'll I'll be in a different country, and like and I guess the aim is to make it work, to kind of design like this kind of lifestyle that I guess design a lifestyle for myself where I'd be happy. And I think before that, mm, I think the aims just are to like not give up, and to just like keep growing the things that I already am. And yeah, just get like a 2-1 in my degree. And um yeah, yeah.
That's good, man. Should we close it off here?
Yeah. So thank you for listening, everyone. Um, episode 125. Hope you enjoyed it.